Black luxury car stopped outside the small, weathered house just as the church bell rang in the distance. Daniel Carter sat inside, his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than he ever had during boardroom battles worth millions. In all his years of rebuilding companies and breaking records, nothing had shaken him like this moment. 5 years had passed since he last stood here. 5 years since he walked away from the woman who once knew him before money did. And now, with a single envelope resting on the passenger seat, he wondered if this visit would heal an old wound or tear it open forever. Emily Carter was folding laundry when she heard the car door close outside. Through the thin curtains, she saw a car far too expensive for her quiet street. Her heart skipped, then hardened. She didn't need to guess who it was. Some memories never fade, they just learn to stay quiet. She took a deep breath, wiped her hands on her apron, and prepared herself for the knock she had waited for and feared for years. Daniel and Emily had once been the kind of couple people admired. They met in church during their early 20s, volunteering at a soup kitchen. Daniel was ambitious but gentle then, full of dreams but grounded by faith and love. Emily was patient, warm, and endlessly supportive. They married young, believing love and prayer would always be enough. And for a while it was. The challenges crept in quietly. Daniel's small business struggled at first, then demanded more time, more energy, more sacrifice. Emily stood by him through unpaid bills, late nights, and constant stress. But success, when it finally came like a storm. Investors, travel, power, and ego pulled Daniel away from home. He stopped praying with Emily, stopped listening, stopped noticing the loneliness in her eyes. The night they separated was not loud or dramatic. It was worse, silent. Emily told him she felt invisible. Daniel, exhausted and defensive, said she didn't understand the pressure he was under. Neither raised their voice. Neither fought hard enough. Within months, Daniel filed for divorce, promising to take care of everything financially. Emily signed the papers with shaking hands, refusing the generous settlement that came with them. Money, she believed, could never replace dignity or love. After the divorce, Daniel's life soared. His company exploded into a global empire. Magazines called him a self-made genius. Churches invited him to speak about success and discipline. But at night, when the noise faded, guilt whispered his name. He avoided thinking about Emily by telling himself she was better off without him. Emily's life went the opposite direction. She moved into the small house left to her by her late mother. She worked 2 jobs, one at a Christian school, another at a local bakery. There were nights she cried herself to sleep, not because she missed the money, but because she missed the man who once held her hand during prayer and promised never to leave. 5 years passed without a word between them. No calls, no letters, until the night Daniel received a call from Pastor Thomas, the man who had married them. "She hasn't been well," the pastor said gently. "Not physically, but in her heart. She never speaks about the past except your name." That night Daniel couldn't sleep. For the first time, he didn't feel like a millionaire or a CEO. He felt like a man who had failed the most important calling of his life, to love. So he came, not with lawyers, not with excuses, just with an envelope and a heart heavy with regret. When Emily opened the door, the world seemed to pause. Daniel stood there, older, thinner, his confident posture replaced by uncertainty. Their eyes met, and 5 years of pain rushed between them. "I won't stay long," Daniel said softly. I needed to see you." Emily said nothing. Silence had become her armor. They sat across from each other at the small wooden table. Daniel noticed the cracks in the walls, the worn furniture, the Bible resting in the corner. This was the life she rebuilt without him. "I'm sorry," he began, his voice breaking. "I know those words don't fix anything, but I need you to hear them." Emily stared at her hands. She had rehearsed 1,000 speeches in her mind over the years, but now none came. Daniel slid the envelope across the table. "This isn't money for you," he said quickly. "It's a confession." Inside was a handwritten letter, not typed, not polished, just pages filled with regret, accountability, and truth. Daniel wrote about his pride, his neglect, his failure as a husband and as a Christian. He wrote about how success cost him the one thing God had given him to protect. Emily's hands trembled as she read. Tears fell onto the paper she had waited 5 years for. "I don't want anything from you," Daniel said. "No forgiveness, no second chance. I just couldn't carry this silence anymore." That was when Emily finally spoke. "You broke me," she whispered. "Not by leaving, but by making me feel like I was never enough." Daniel's tears fell freely now. "You were always enough. I was the one who failed." They talked for hours about the loneliness, the faith they both struggled to hold on to, the anger, the healing. It wasn't a reunion, it wasn't a miracle ending, it was something deeper: truth. Before leaving, Daniel did one last thing. He knelt beside her chair, bowed his head, and asked, "May I pray for you?" Emily hesitated, then nodded. As he prayed, not as a millionaire, but as a broken man asking God for mercy, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in years: peace. The silence she carried cracked open, not with bitterness, but with release. When Daniel stood to leave, Emily said quietly, "I forgive you." He smiled through tears. "That's more than I deserve." Daniel drove away lighter than he had arrived. And Emily stood at the door, not healed completely, but no longer trapped in the past. The story didn't end with romance or reunion. It ended with redemption, with two imperfect people choosing honesty over pride, humility over wealth, and faith over silence. Because sometimes the greatest gesture isn't money or success or words spoken too late. Sometimes it's the courage to kneel, confess, and let God do the rest.